My name's Richard Miller, and you're at Never Not Here, and please feel welcome. And a lot of times we channel our speech and our subjects, and we really kind of go narrow to some different kind of philosophies, or trying to find the king of philosophies, or trying to understand really what's at the core of life. And other times we broaden out and just find out where people are activating their searches and where they contact life. And many times we talk about, first of all, let me just say we take guidance from each other. And so we're real habituated in seeking guidance and asking, and we even pray to the Lord, if we are so inclined, or we pray for guidance. And so then certain religions pray to saints, and you don't have to believe all these things, but I'm just kind of laying out different things that happen in our society. And so then guides and saints and angels, and they're not always manifest, or they're not always what you would call embodied. So I don't know if this, it's not that we're talking about voodoo or spirits, but these things are real for a certain amount of people, and real live guidance comes through, and it makes a difference in your life. And so we're here with two people that have some familiarity with working with angels and guides. And so we're with Linda Padgurskis. Did I say that right?
Padgurskis.
Padgurskis.
Yes.
And Linda P., welcome to Never Not Here.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
And we're with Rosmond Williams.
Yes,
so.
That's right. Yeah, true. Just call me Ros for short.
Okay, I will do it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here too, Richard, talking about this topic. A lot of people are interested in it, so.
So are you both what you'd call naturals, where you've been able to contact guidance for long periods of time, or are these recent? What about you, Linda?
Oh, it's been fairly recent. It's been about 7 years that I began my spiritual journey, and I began channeling with the angels in September of 2007, and I started to take these Hawaiian energy classes called ARCH, Ancient Rainbow Conscious Healing, and those were the energy that the medicine men and women practiced in Hawaii thousands of years ago. And I started taking classes in February of 2008, and I took 4 classes total, and I became an expert level practitioner in May of 2010. So it's been a process.
So anyhow, this is really interesting, because I'm not really getting that you're saying that you had no affinity toward it at all as a child or as a young woman. But I mean, we're saying that this is something that can be learned.
Oh, definitely. And I certainly was meant to do this, but I had other things to do growing up. I had to focus on other things. It wasn't my time yet. I had to experience different things in life to prepare me for what I'm doing now.
How about you, Roz?
It's an interesting story. For me, the more I look at it now, I think the angels have always been really talking to me. It started as a child. Growing up in Indiana, I was in the forest a lot, and I always had this kind of sense that I was being directed or talked to. At first I thought it was a little crazy, but as I look back on it now, I realize that there was really a lot of communication going on with me very early on in my life. And it was connecting those dots between my early life and what I learned about angels later, that where I could make that connection, and those things weren't as mystical to me anymore as much as they were just proof that we're kind of guided by these energies that are out there.
So we're guided anyhow, even if we don't know it, right?
Even if we don't know,
if we don't have a clear, a verbal message.
Absolutely.
Something, there's a propensity or some kind of feeling that we
know instinctively, intuitively. it's interesting whether you pay attention to it or not. For me, I paid attention to it. And it used to baffle me. Why this way? But like I said, about 15 to 20 years ago, I met Doreen Virtue, who is a gifted writer and speaker, and she talks quite, that's angels are her thing, and I met her, and she convinced me to get involved with it. I went through her training back in the mid-90s or so.
So is her training about how to access this I don't even want to call it a power,
Yeah.
I mean, but just how to access your own communication.
How to access your own communication, how to work with them, how to call on specific angels. And in my work, it appears that when you call a specific energy, like an Archangel Michael or an Archangel Raphael, they come with a particular type of energy, and that energy then gets enhanced, by how you manifest it. So it's really quite interesting how it works.
This is a really interesting topic because a lot of times we talk about oneness,
right?
Or something that we're actually saying that there aren't any individuals. And you're saying that the energy is very different, and it's important who you're calling up, and maybe you'll get a different message.
Right. That's true.
Say a little bit about that.
And everybody can communicate with angels.
Yeah.
Everybody. So it's not that we may be gifted in a way because we're able to help people do that, but every single person can do that.
Is there a difference between what they call guides and what they call angels? I mean, we always want to put one higher than the other and say, well, what's the hierarchy, right? But that's not really it, is it?
I just want to say briefly that, looking at the history of angels, Zoroaster is one of the ancient mystics who really focused on these angelic energies. And really, that's where we kind of get our religious beginnings in talking about angels. Now,
you're talking about the history of man intersecting angels or
right.
talking angels.
It goes all the way back to the shaman practices of our Stone Age forefathers. There was a belief in these energies, whether we were connected to them somehow through memory or directly, more so than we are now, in terms of visually seeing them. It's been with us, and it's in almost every religious faith has some talk about angels. It's surprising how much is in the Jewish faith, Christianity, Islam. They all talk about angels. And they play very significant roles in the development of mankind.
So that's really interesting that angels are spoken of in many, many organized religions.
Yes.
And maybe we've all known that, but what's the deal? We just don't take it seriously, I guess, or we don't really see the connection of how to follow up on it.
Well, I think early man was much more connected to the land, to earth, to the nature, and in that realm, I think things were more mysterious to them. So they tended to really, anything about sickness or whether it was rain or not rain or something like that, they really counted on talking to the spiritual world and asking for help. So I think we've gotten away from that in our modern development, and although there's a renewed interest now in angels from the standpoint that we're talking about 2012 and the big shift that's coming in our consciousness.
How is that different than praying to the Lord, or so many people pray, so then in that way they're asking a disembodied power for help?
Well, when you pray to God, it's the angels that help you because they're messengers of God. So they pick up what it is you need, and they actually communicate with you through your thoughts. Like up to 90% of what you're thinking of is actually the angels communicating with you. And when I tell people that, they're like, oh my gosh, you know, and they get it. It's like, you know what, you're right, because it's amazing what we think of and what helps us move forward in life.
Yeah. A lot of times, too, we get really tied up in our mumbo jumbo in the brain. Not every thought is a perfectly formed one that comes from someplace higher.
So those aren't the angels.
Those
Right.
aren't the. That's just our insanity.
Yes, monkey brain.
monkey
a lot of
brain,
times
right.
people refer to that.
The way I look at my messages from angels, much as I did when I was a kid, now that I look back on it, it was a quiet whispering. It was a kind of, I'm talking to you, and when you really tune into that, you can hear, and not so much from the standpoint of words as much as an understanding, a knowing, I call it.
So if a knowing comes through first, then maybe you sit in that knowing and try to find the words for it, so that
Absolutely.
you can actually,
Absolutely,
so that
That's
you can actually communicate it to who you're guiding.
That's exactly what's happening. That's exactly what's happening, because a lot of words are very limited. And as you know, different languages have different words for love. And, you know, if you're talking about Eskimos, they have how many words for snow, you know. So, you know, our language is limiting in that way. When we're listening to spirit, it comes in profound ways sometimes that we don't quite know how to describe in words.
Well, what I tell people a lot is, you know, the angels are trying to communicate with you. That's what I get a lot during my healings. And they go, well, how do I know? And I go, well, did you ever have that high-pitched, like screeching noise coming from your ear that is like coming from nowhere? That happened to me a lot for the longest time, and I had no idea it was the angels. Or I also say, and they'll say, yes, I've had that. Or they'll be able to get up in the middle of the night and not get back to sleep. I mean, you know, there's a lot of times when you're worried and you have insomnia, but for the most part, I tell people that get a paper and a pen and sit down and write your thoughts, because the angels want to talk to you at that time. They have your undivided attention because it's the middle of the night, you know, and they want to be able to go and help you. And so you're just supposed to sit down and just start writing, and there's a lot of information in there.
So that's interesting that you can actually, so then maybe it doesn't come until you start to write. In other words, there you are. You said there's a couple of signs. One could be a noise in your ear, you know. I mean, other people will just say, oh, I'll give it a name, you know, say tinnitus or something like that. And I'm getting old or something like that, but they won't. But here's, okay, whether it is or not, I mean, you can just say, okay, like maybe there's a communication here. Maybe I should just do, would you call it automatic writing, or just write a little bit and see what comes? Yes,
exactly. And you'll be surprised. And so a lot of people have done that, and they found that, yes, they're definitely getting information. So, and like you said, that gut feeling, everybody's able to communicate, but, you know, everybody can communicate in different ways. Sometimes they'll actually see angels, or sometimes they'll go and, you know, have that gut feeling or that knowingness. Sometimes you feel like you've gotten downloaded all this information that just came out of nowhere without you having to study manuals. I mean, it's fascinating.
What do you mean, like see angels, like with your eyes open or closed?
Well, for me, I personally have never seen an angel, but they appear to me in my mind when I'm doing healings. But I've heard their voice, and everybody can do this. Tomorrow morning, don't bother to go and set your alarm, because when you get woken up, okay, just say, angels, I want you to wake me up tomorrow. And they will wake you up. And I've heard, Linda, it's time to get up. Or sometimes the phone will ring at that time, or somebody in the house will be, you know, knocking on the bedroom door that they need my help. But or the phone will ring. So if you want to get up, they're going to go and wake you up in some way, shape, or form. But I've heard their beautiful, beautiful voice. I've heard music coming in from my bedroom. Yeah. And I don't know where it's coming from. When I first wake up, this happened only to me one time. But I heard this music, and it was loud. And it wasn't like trumpets or harps, but I knew it was angelic. And I woke up and I thought, well, why isn't my husband getting up? And then I realized it was music just for me to hear.
I've had the same experience. I've had more like strings, more like kind of this classical kind of sound or a kind of a drone, you know, as a bunch of cellos or, you know, kind of warming up. You know, I've had that happen. I've heard voices. I've seen lights out of the corner of my eye. I've seen the way I look at angels and the way I think about angels too. They'll show up in a way that would probably least frighten you. You know, I think if an angel, big winged angel, showed up in front of most people, they'd probably run in fear. You know, but sometimes they'll just show up as a person. You know, or they'll show up as a light, and I get mostly that. I get a blue beacon of light that shows up around me. Other things that have happened to me too, I've smelled strong scent of flowers like roses in a room, or I'll get goosebumps, a slight chill feeling, even though it's warm in the room, and that's that way on, or some emotion will flood me.
So maybe all those are like high signs that could be a good time to do this writing thing.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, I just want to say that the writing is really maybe just logical, because I remember as a student and as a young man, I was never very good at writing until I got a computer, and when I could kind of let my hands. When I first got my first computer, I found out I could actually write, and just by starting and just by, you know, correcting and that kind of thing. But somehow just to get the flow going. So then I don't know. I mean, we do talk about journaling, and we talk about automatic writing and different things. And is it important where that's coming from? How does it enhance that by saying it's an angel, and actually by recognizing which angel it is? Or is it okay just to kind of start to receive messages from what? I mean, just from the source, or from just from some kind of like consciousness, collective consciousness that's usually is below the water, you know?
Well, when you think about who we are as bodies or as beings in a world that's you know, still quite mysterious to us. We know that there's life. We know that you know, in quantum physics they talk about everything being energy, everything being a wave, even including every cell and molecule that makes us up. So in a way, we're light beings anyway. We're made of light, and when we think of angels, they're light beings too. And because I don't know necessarily what all this is, I just know that there are other energies out there for whatever reason that are there to help us. And if you look at the history of angels, again, going back to some of the ancient religious practices, angels are messengers of a higher consciousness that we can turn to in times of need, or whenever we're wanting to communicate with that higher consciousness, if you will, that makes everything that we are and everything that we see.
Let me ask you this, because like in a way, angels can exist or they don't exist. I can't, whatever I do doesn't change that. And but I can believe in them, and I can not believe in them. So maybe that's the door, that I open the door to being helped by angels. But what about if okay, let's say I believe in angels, and I open the door to them with that belief, and I believe that I can be helped. Well, wouldn't that just open the door to be hindered too, and just say that then there's some kind of other spirits that are like to interfere, or like to be? Isn't that the whole thing of God and the devil? Or I mean, does that open? What is malevolence?
Well, you know, I personally have never really been surrounded by any type of bad energy. I guess just because I have a close connection with angels, but the fact that you're open to them, you believe in them, and depending on what's going on in your life, you'll always have a lot around you, and they come and go in your life. You get assigned to them, and different, you know, depending on what's going on, and you may have a special need, and so this special angel specifically to help you with that is going to come into your life. So that's how it works. But just by being open and saying, you know, help me, I believe in you. And the one thing with angels is they're very encouraging. Whenever I have gotten channel writings, and at this point I've gotten quite a few, many hundred of them, they will lovingly scold you. They'll never get angry because all they know is this perfect world. True. You know, there's no time or there's no space. So when they say, Linda, good things are happening, you're going to go and this is going to happen, this is going to happen, it may be farther along than what you think because you think everything's going to happen like right away. But since they have no, connection with time, it may be 3 years on down the line, it may not be a couple of months, but the more open you are and the more positive, good things will come quicker to you.
So then it's really important to kind of have a faith, because if you're always checking and saying, well, gee, they said this, didn't happen. So then since there's no real timeline, it might be on your deathbed or who knows, in 10 years or a long time. And
well, also, I think, it's interesting, but I hear people talk about angels having a sense of humor.
Oh, yes.
And the more you open yourself up to belief and to faith, the more they show up. The more synchronicities start to happen in your life, the more things that are kind of uncanny start to, happen around you. So it is about that. It is about your faith. It is about believing. And I think what's important, and maybe Linda will agree with me, particularly now in our development as a human species, even though we're surrounded by a lot of people and our lives can get quite rushed and quite busy, I really believe that a lot of people are very lonely today. A lot of people are, even though they have wives, husbands, children, there's a part of people that there's a seeking going on. And I think this is, when we work with angels, we're kind of reaching back in our history when we really counted on those, this energy to really connect with us, to be by our sides, to be with us all the time, that we're never really alone, that we can always ask for their help and always be guided when we ask for their help.
And they want to connect with us. So what happens is the angels that are assigned to us and surround us, they will have the same sense of humor as you do. Okay, so if you're a very serious, scientific type of person, that's who you're gonna, have around you. But I know my angels, they could be very, very funny at times, honestly, and they'll go and they have jokes in my channel writing. It's like, oh my gosh, it's just hysterical, But that's because they have the same sense of humor as I do.
Yeah.
Let me ask this then, because this is very interesting. That these influences in our life, they come in and in a way, they guide us, they cheer us up, they share our sense of humor, and we talked about a lot of people feel loneliness. So I'm not necessarily saying that the angels are like a friend or somehow an antidote for loneliness, but somehow the whole opening procedure maybe allows people to be more humorous with their relationships and more open with the relationship. I mean, it could backfire because at first maybe you say, I hear this angel and they say this, and then the other people say, well, I don't believe you. But I think you probably get over that pretty quick, of trying to...
Let me just say this too, Richard. I think that, when you talk about what angels would say, and Linda can back me up on this, that whenever I hear an angel speak, whenever I get any kind of information, whether it's an intuition, a knowing, it's going to come from a place of love. If I'm getting something that's really about fear, really about anxiety, really about stress, then that's really just me, and that's my ego, Angels will never tell you anything that's going to be fearful. Now, do they protect us? Do they tell us, maybe you shouldn't go here or there? Well, they do. But it's never from a place of fear. It's about what's best for you in a loving way. So that's how I differentiate. And Doreen Virtue talks about this in her books. How to tell the difference between what's your voice or the ego's voice, so to speak, and what's really coming through from the angels and from a place of love.
That really answers my other question. That if I don't want to use the word evil, but anyhow, if kind of like interfering forces could get involved, but in a way, you've closed the door to the interfering forces. Because you've said, okay, well, that's just ego because it's kind of negative, and so then you're not even open for that. You're just saying, well, that's what I'm actually trying to dismiss, or trying to not necessarily dismiss, but take less seriously, let's say. And so already there's kind of like a goodness filter there, or something like.
Oh, exactly.
It's interesting.
And what will happen at times when I do my healings is this unconditional love comes through, and sometimes it happens when like a deceased loved one has come through and they want to be able to communicate how much they mean to you. And maybe there was not a good relationship at the time, my client and this deceased person, but now they want to tell them how much they love them, and, that they're sorry for maybe the things that they've caused in their life. But I'll get this unconditional love, and it's indescribable. I mean, I all I can do is just cry like these incredible tears, and like try and like explain into words, which sometimes is very, very difficult.
Very, very difficult. Yeah.
But then it's just really emotional, and it just gives them this peaceful feeling, knowing that their loved one is helping them on the other side, and that they're always with them.
Well, we're getting a lot of background on guides, and I don't know if I should just call them disembodied or unembodied entities, and it's nice to know that they care about us, or maybe they once were us. And I don't really think it matters whether you believe in this or don't believe in it, because it helps certain people, and certain people are able to access information, and if they say it's from an angel and you say no, I don't think it is, I don't think that changes the information any. And if it's helpful to you, if you take a session with somebody that's reading or channeling, so I don't really want to get into prove that these things exist, or are they really separate from you, or is it just a part of you that you're in touch with that some of us overlook? Or I don't think any of that's important, but where I think we're ready to talk a little bit about how this is put into action. I think we have a good background, and so that what is really does it make a difference if you know the person you're talking to and reading their channeling for them, or is it easier with somebody that you've never known before? Or I mean, what are some of the ways that this really gets put into action?
Well, you want me to start off?
Yeah, sure.
Well, when I first started looking at this, and working with angels, of course, I was looking for a way to really kind of bring my spiritual path in line with some of the more mystical experiences I was having and had when I was growing up and going through life. And angels seem to be that right mix. It just seemed to have that, because they do have kind of in fact, the Archangel Michael is a pagan angel. It was back during our pagan rituals that Michael was really called.
That's interesting, because I bet all the religions are trying to claim these angels, and then they say, no, wait a minute, we were here before you guys even got thought up.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an interesting thing, but I think when I first got involved, being an engineer by background and training, I was kind of on the fence about all of this. I wasn't really a true believer. I kind of had my ups and downs, my doubts, and all that. But as I started doing readings, there was no way for me to say that it wasn't real, because I was saying things that I didn't know about a person that I was in front of, that they were confirming were true for them. So in fact, when I first started doing readings, it scared me at first. It scared me a little that I was seeing things and knowing things and being talked to in a way that I could really channel this information to someone I was doing a reading for, and I actually became afraid and stopped doing it for a while. And I had to understand that it was a test of my faith, to just go with the flow and really believe. And every reading I've ever done, Richard, has been really helpful for the people that I've done readings for. So yeah, this is one of the ways that they help us. They help, at least in my experience, coming through me, to help people block or unblock some of the issues that they have around their hearts.
Do people have to believe in it, or believe that you're contacting an authentic angel, or?
It's not necessary. No, it's not necessary.
So in other words, first they ask you some questions, and they probably try to see if you know something, right? And then this has come kind of a verification step.
Or they'll even try to fool me.
Yeah.
By saying something that isn't true, when I'm seeing something that is true for them. And eventually they have to I did a reading recently where a woman, I kept asking her about some place in the country. I kept seeing this home in the country. She says, "No, I live in the city." I said, "No, I keep seeing this place in the country." And then, 5 minutes later, she says, "Oh yeah, I have this house out in the country. It's really out in the boondocks. I go there on weekends."
Oh gosh. Yeah, I'm trying to trick you. Well, I would probably try to make a test too. Maybe it's just subconscious. You can't help it. Because you think, well, how do these guys do this? Or what exactly? Where does the breadth and the depth of this?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? Nobody ever really tries to trick me, but I think what happens is, I give them all the information I got after the healing, and then we talk, and I'm usually such right on target that they don't really do like a shock, and they're like, "Oh my gosh!" I mean, I've gotten some pretty amazing things, and so people don't try and trick you. They're there because they've either heard about me or, I don't know, read about me, or they referred to me from somebody.
Well, Linda, what kind of things get healed? I mean, is it
a lot?
And how does that emotional things?
Emotional level, spiritual level, mental level.
How is emotional and spirit? Where is spiritual tie in? What does that mean? Because emotional and mental we can figure out, but spiritual feeds through in those two, right? Well,
spiritual, basically, we're spiritual beings in a physical body. Okay, so that's pretty important to know, because this physical body is just temporary. So
yeah, but I mean, does that mean we have any spiritual problems? Because I thought that spiritual was beyond problems, or I thought we create problems with our emotions and our mind, and I didn't know that spirits have problems too.
Well, I'm real big on the chakras. There's 7 levels of energy centers that we have, and when people are worried a real lot, that will usually mean that their spiritual centers, their higher chakras, their third eye, which gives you that intuitiveness, that knowingness, their psychic abilities, and then their crown chakras, their communication with angels and guides and deceased loved ones, that gets totally blocked. So I can always tell when somebody worries too much, because there's no energy coming from here, because I put my hands, it's really a touchless type of modality, healing modality that I do. And I'll say, "You know what, you are so worried. Oh my God, it's consumed your life." And they're like, "Yes, I worry about everything." I mean, it doesn't matter how old they are. I've worked on little kids that have been very worried. And so I'll open that up for them. And it's I tell them, keep these energy centers open. And it's just, you got to imagine them open and glowing and beautiful and spinning, because they're kind of being referred to as like a fan. That's how Doreen Virtue refers to it. So that's one way that I help people spiritually.
So each one has its own kind of tendency. You say worries on the crown chakra, or is it just all anxiety would do the same thing, and whether it's even feeling limited or feeling lonely or
anything negative. Yes, right? Any fears, worries, negativity will block your chakras.
So then, like, something that wouldn't be worry probably would be aggression or like anger, you know.
And that would mostly be, that will affect your heart more. You know, anger and jealousy and bitterness and unforgiveness, that affects your heart chakra. So then it's very difficult then to love or feel love and be loved and to show love.
So it's pretty hard, you know, we start to worry, you know, from a long list of conditioning, right? So that we don't really know how we got into this mess, you know, and so we really can't know how we're going to get out, right? Because you could say stop worrying, but of course in 5 minutes I'll be worrying like crazy, right? I'm worried about how I can stop worrying, right?
No, exactly. But I help people with that. I'm very good at like writing everything down, and you know, that's just a mindset that you have to like monitor your thoughts in the beginning, because people will automatically go to that negativity, that worry. I mean, I grew up in a home that everybody worried. I mean, my parents, I can just remember them walking around the house saying, oh my gosh. And that's the type of environment I grew up in. And believe me, they still worry, okay, no matter what.
So you're an expert on that one.
You know, so I tell people, you know, I say, you know, ask your angels for help. And in the beginning, just kind of monitor your thoughts. You know, as soon as you say something negative, say, you know, cancel that thought or change it into something positive. And then you have to work at it in the beginning.
So then really what you need to do is ask the angels to help you notice. Because you're not really noticing all those things, and they just run and run and run, right?
It's automatic. So, yeah, so you can say, be aware. Allow me to be aware. That's another thing you could ask, and that helps too.
You know, for me, the way that they come through for a person that I'm doing a reading for is I notice that they really are trying to get each and every one of us back to love, back to feeling love, back to understanding that there's nothing to be worried about, that, like Linda said, that these bodies are only temporary, that we are spirits in a body, and to remember that everything should come from love. And so really it's getting people to understand that their hearts have been blocked. You know, a lot of the readings I do are about carrying trauma, guilt, anger, all those things that really block the process of love. So I think that's why the angels are really here, guiding us and helping us. It's really taking us back to love. Now, the humor and stuff that they participate in is just their way of getting us to be comfortable with them, and allowing us to. And you talked about this earlier, being our friends, that they are our friends, that they are with us all the time. We can call on them at any time that we're feeling that we need to. It's not like you know, calling up a friend who is not at home at the time when you.
Well, actually, that's a whole big thing about well, at least Christianity. I don't know about other religions, but they have this ardent claim that God is a person, and some say God's a spirit, but also a person, and some say no, he's a flesh and blood person. And you know, I mean, whether you'll ever find him walking around. And the whole idea is that you can have a relationship with them, and you can feel comfortable.
That's the whole idea.
And then you can be a little bit less self-centered.
Absolutely, and it is about bringing us back to the consciousness of who we really are, and that when you come from a place of love, it's really going to be beneficial to all of us on the planet when we come to that particular understanding, that particular awareness. We've gotten away from that.
See, we all think that we are supposed to come to a place of love after a certain condition is met.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and we want the condition to be met first. In other words, it's really easy to reflect love to somebody that's loving.
Sure.
But it's very hard to be the first one and say, well, I'm going to love somebody that's not loving. And so then where do the angels, what do they suggest? I mean,
well, I mean, when you look at it from the standpoint of, you know, as it says in one religious tradition, you know, if someone strikes you on, you know, one cheek, you know, turn and offer them the other. It's like you said, it's very easy to offer love when you feel that you're being given love. But our challenge here is to offer love regardless, because that then encourages more and more love all the way around. I mean, when you look at the peace movements around the world, and peaceful marches as opposed to violent marches, achieve a lot more than the violence that we hand out on a daily basis.
Why is it so built into us that, vindication seems to be a really big part of our history and our tradition, and it's really hard to shake because it comes along with a feeling like we got to get that guy, or our whole justice system. It just seems like it's just so unjust if somebody really hurts someone, especially if they do it callously and on purpose and again and again. It seems like that he ought to be, I'm going to teach you a lesson. I got to teach you a lesson. How can we? I mean, we're saying that doesn't work, and we have to step aside from that, or step around it, or move beyond it.
Well, the one thing I've learned, especially being a healer, is that all the blockages we have in our heart, if we can just let them go and be able to forgive others, there was a marquee on the church, and I love this. It says, bitterness is like taking poison and expecting the other person to die. We have all of this like heaviness that we have inside of us, and it's so hard for people to forgive. But once you can just realize that what you're forgiving is just, you're forgiving that person, you're blessing them. You're not saying that what they did was okay, but it's just time to let it go. And once you can go and get that heart chakra clear and beautiful and just all this negativity gone, then you're able to just love yourself. People don't love themselves, and that's why all of this like horrible things are happening in the world. When you love yourself, it's easy to give love, and it's easier to find people who love themselves too, and so you have an amazing relationship then.
So in other words, we're saying forgive yourself, but not for any fault. In other words, like forgiving is actually just taking the burden off yourself, or taking the poison out of your own system.
Well, imagine this, Richard. I mean, when we're in a place of fear, or when we're in a place of anger, who are we really hurting? We're hurting ourselves. It's our own misery that we're causing in ourselves. So first of all, I have to forgive myself for what I think I'm seeing or doing. So
in a way, we hear that and we kind of believe it too, but then our momentum is not that. Now, how does a message from an angel actually make a difference and make people see the light that this actually is the only way to heal society and heal myself?
Let me give you a story of a reading I did for a young lady whose father had abandoned her and her mother when she was a baby, and now that she was an adult, the father wanted to really connect with her and come into her life, and she was really feeling a lot of angst about that. Here's this man who hasn't supported me and been in my life all these years. Now he wants to come and be a part of my life. Well, I'm not sure I want him, and I'm not so sure how I feel about him. Well, as I was doing a reading for her, I don't know, the angel, what I was told is, I asked her if she loves herself. And I think if you ask most people that, they would say, yes, of course, I love myself. And so she said, I love myself. Well, I said, or what I was given, the next time you look in the mirror, maybe you can start by loving that part of yourself that's him. And maybe that's just enough of a door for you to start looking at that part of yourself and offering that part of yourself in terms of loving him.
Totally wise, no matter where it came from. But somehow, maybe we're saying that because an angel said that, or it said through Ros, an angel said that through Ros, that it was more easily accepted, or?
I just feel, Richard, I'll be honest with you, when I do readings sometimes and I say these things, they're not coming from me. I felt, in fact, I was kind of wowed that fell out of my mouth. Because it was quite, and in fact, at the time, it felt extremely spiritual. It came from an extremely loving place. I mean, more love than I can even begin to describe for this young lady. And her and I started to tear up because it was definitely from someplace else, definitely coming through the angels for me. That this was divine information, and I probably couldn't have said it the way that it was being said if it were left up to me and my ego. So,
well, a lot of people, have issues from their upbringing, but what made so much sense to me is that we actually pick our parents before we come down into this body. And we pick the people that are going to teach us the lessons that we need to learn in this lifetime. We all have lessons to learn, and we all have a mission that we're supposed to accomplish. And sometimes people go through life and they're just oblivious to what they're supposed to do, and then they got to come back again and do that mission. But for the most part, though, it's whatever you're just fascinated with and that you love to do, and it doesn't feel like a job. That's the best way to describe a mission. But a lot of times, though, we'll have these lessons, and our parents, sometimes it can be a very difficult upbringing, but we learn things about ourselves that we wouldn't have learned otherwise. We learn how to be strong. We learn how to go and be a different type of person. A more patient person, maybe. Maybe you've been the parent to your parent because they may have had alcoholic issues or whatever. But it's amazing when you think back. It's like, okay, what did I learn from our parents? And it's amazing what you come up with because of that.
Yeah, I think I'd like to say again, it doesn't really matter what you believe. Whether you believe you pick your parents or whether you find that too much of a stretch. It's really a real positive attitude to take, because then right away you're not blaming anybody. It takes the blame out of the equation, and the blame is kind of what blocks everything.
Right. It's an expansion of love. It really is. It's an expansion of love. There's too much self-loathing in the world. There a lot of people don't like themselves, and for those who. We all have our wounds, and we all have our guilt, and we all have our shame. Things we wish we hadn't done. Even if we hadn't done anything, maybe the shame is that we should have. So we all have that. And when we tap in and start using this angelic energy, we're reminded of who we really are. We're reminded that we're even created, that everything that we have and everything that we are comes from a place of love. And it's just trying to get us back there, get us out of the fear, get us out of the ego, get us out of the stuff that causes wars and hatred and all the things that cause misery in the world and causes our own individual suffering.
What do angels say about trauma? Because several times in the discussion we really talked about that we all have our trauma, or when I'm releasing trauma or something like this. And of course trauma, it's only a memory. No matter how horrible and how bad it was. Maybe I don't have an arm, or I'm deformed, or there could be a lot of things. Maybe I was in a fire or something like that, or that's a trauma that I in a way carry with me. But so much of trauma is a memory, and then something about us says, I'd rather wreck the rest of my life, including today and tomorrow, than forget about this trauma. It's so important to me that I wasted so much time on this that I'm going to just take this all the way to the grave. And I guess,
people do.
What does an angel say that says, hey, the trauma is not real? Some people go at it that way, right? Because real means it's not here now. It's a memory now. And then the neatest part about trauma is it's over if you remember that part. But if you don't remember it and want to,
well, let's look at a lot of the returning veterans from Afghanistan and who are going through all kinds of therapy for the things that were witnessed in war. War is not pretty. Trauma is a way of, of course, trauma is a shock to the body and mind. And it is the kind of thing that causes us to want to shut down. Trauma, it gets locked into our cells, into our, not only in our minds and and all that, but it can be trapped inside.
I don't know if it gets locked though, because trauma is just a vision. Our eyes are open, our senses are open, things come in. They might be so different than what we've ever imagined even.
Sure.
We've never imagined it. And then there's a huge justice factor in it, probably like that the total innocents are being just ripped apart.
Yeah.
And so something like that, but it's not really locked there. But we lock it there because we're running away from it and saying, no, push that out.
Well, remember that every cell in our body has memory. Everything about us energetically captures what we see and what we experience. So when I say locked in the body, what I mean is, you may experience a trauma, and oh gee, I'm just gonna push that away. I'm not gonna think about that. I'm not gonna deal with that. It was too much. It's over. I'm out of here. Well, if you don't resolve it, if you don't make peace with it, if you don't bring love to that experience in a way that releases it, then it just winds up being something else in the body. Cancer, a heart attack, something
Well, there's
else.
that pressure on the body, but also it just keeps popping up.
It
just
keeps
as
popping
its
up.
own memory,
Right.
The own memory comes up when you're talking about the soldiers. And
Absolutely. So what I want to say about that is that trauma, what the angels really want us to do is to remember, all of my thoughts are past thoughts. Every thought I have is a past thought. But if I'm holding on to thoughts that are keeping me blocked, if I'm holding on to thoughts that are keeping me traumatized, unable to love, unable to move forward in one way or another, then that's not allowing me to live in the full experience of who I really am as a loving and loved being. You understand? So really releasing that trauma is very important. Getting in touch with it and letting it go. Remembering that I'm always in my past thoughts. So which past thoughts would I rather have? Maybe I can reframe that experience.
Well, I did a lot of research through the years trying to understand, who I was and why I'm here and all that. And what made a lot of sense to me is finding out that we pick, before we come down to this earth, we pick what's going to happen to us. I mean, we have free will, so nothing is set in stone, but we pick some of the experiences that will help us to learn our lessons. But past life also is involved with all this because, our cells have like the memories of past lives. So many of our fears and our strengths and our passions are actually from things that we experienced in our past life. So we have to resolve a lot of issues not only in this life, but in past lives as well. So that's why past life regressions are important to have, and also life between life sessions are amazingly powerful. And I've had both, and they really changed my life. So that's very, very important. So, sometimes we may be burned in a fire because we want to be able to learn a certain lesson and accept ourselves and still love ourselves. And that's a process with all of
So
this.
thoughts come in and feelings come in.
Yeah.
And so sometimes they come from right now, this instant. Sometimes they come from a memory or what we call it trauma. And now we're saying that they could even come from other times that we don't even remember or know about. And we can... some people seem to get a lot of information that they wouldn't otherwise have had, so that we can say that they must, where did they get all this stuff? They must have been living before or something like that, and we can call it past lives. But anyhow, okay, thoughts and emotions come in, right? And feelings and moods come in. But some people just teach that you don't have to get on the train. In other words, they're going to be coming through even after, what does resolved mean, basically? Because, you can't really... let's say you're on this big submersible, this big submarine, and you're kind of riding the conning tower, and that whole submarine, we don't even know how big it is. It's subconscious or collective consciousness or something. We can't resolve the whole consciousness of humanity. And so then we can learn not to really be moved by it. In other words, we can feel it. It's going to resonate through our body, but somehow we don't have to getting involved with emotions is one thing and feeling them, but getting involved with the story of the emotions is something that seems to be endless.
And telling us the same story over and over again. You know, re-traumatizing ourselves every time we think about it. We don't need to do that. That's not a very loving process. So, you know, really, when I talk about resolving it, it's understanding that whatever that trauma was, it's now over. What did I learn from that experience? What do I take away from it? Did I learn it's a place I never want to be again? That possibly, I mean, I think about some of these stories of people who have lost loved ones to violent acts, who go on to forgive the person that actually committed the act. That's a way of releasing a trauma.
That is totally amazing, you know, because we were just talking before about what is this about humanity that always is vindictive and it gets back into the same slot, and something that says we got to teach these guys lessons, we got to keep them under control, we got to make an example out of them so other people don't feel like you get a free ride. And there's so many excuses that we you know. I think I want to say this, that especially even here at Never Not Here, because you were saying that angels are talking about thoughts, and you know what you can do with your thoughts, or realize that they're not coming from this moment or this part of your life, and that's kind of abstract. And I know, because Never Not Here is pretty abstract. We get into philosophies and we tie these things around. Right. Somehow I don't feel like almost angels would attack in that way. You know, that would say, hey, let these thoughts go because you know, they're not happening now. But I would think that angels might come more and say something like, you have an important life, and you have a contribution to give, and so like let's get off it and let's get prepared to give this contribution, and you need a clear space in order to do that, and you have a certain number of years, and they're precious years, and you really need to let go of old things so that you can be a benefit for those that are around you and those in your community.
Sure. You know, A Course in Miracles talks about all thoughts having an effect. All thoughts create. Negative ones, positive ones, they all create. They all give off an energy. So if you're having negative thoughts, if you're thinking of a trauma, oh gosh, this person was awful to me. And we all know this. When we think of something really terrible that's happened in our lives, don't we kind of get those same emotions flowing through our bodies, and we kind of get, you know, kind of tensed up again, and we start to...
No, definitely. I mean, it happens even this week, or I mean, all the time. Sometimes, what was I thinking about? Somebody on the CTA throwing a guy off the platform and grabbing his coat, you know, and I was thinking, no, I just had this vision of a gun shooting holes in the guy or something like that, you know. But I mean, that's what I'm talking about, is that thoughts come and go, and you really can't necessarily protect yourself from them, but you don't have to get on the train and go with them.
Yes, right. You don't, and in fact, every time you do that, every time you have that thought about shooting and putting holes or whatever happened on the train, so to speak, I mean, you're just re-traumatizing yourself. You're reliving that experience, because all thoughts create, all thoughts have effect. Wouldn't it be much better to reconcile that thought and move away from it and open yourselves up, like you said, to more love and more peace? Because all that's doing when you have that thought is causing your own suffering.
Yeah, that's amazing, you know, because I guess, you know, and then just from personal experience, I think sometimes we just try to re-traumatize ourselves right up to the tightest wire, the highest tension, and just keep it going and saying, I'm going to go through life just tense as can be, and I'm never going to forgive that. And I mean, isn't it amazing that we do that to ourselves?
Well,
to ourselves.
Yes, exactly. What made so much sense to me is, and it was in the Bible, you know, we cannot judge people. And when you think about that, it's like we're all at different levels, you know, and you can't go and tell people, you can't change anybody. You can't tell them how to live. They have to go through their own life and do their own healing. But that's what all the wars get started. You know, you don't agree with me, so I have to kill you. something, and that's when you think about all how the wars have started and all this violence.
Senseless things. Yeah.
It's like if people just don't judge others, I mean, how much more like peaceful the world would be. Mm-hmm. So that made it, when I realized that, and here, this is something that was taught in the Bible thousands of years ago. It's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, our salvation, you mentioned that earlier. What's our salvation? How do I heal from this? There's only one way: forgiveness, and not the traditional way of forgiving. Where you've done something terrible, and now because I'm the better person, I'm going to forgive you. Not that kind of forgiveness. We're talking about self-forgiveness, forgiving myself for creating the thought and all the emotions that come with it. And then forgiving what I've created. Forgive what I've created by witnessing it, by labeling it, by judging it, by taking it on, and then forgive myself for creating it.
Another way to that people teach is impersonalization, that you didn't create it, and that you have no guilt, and then just drop the guilt, And then I guess they're just saying that all thoughts are coming from somewhere else.
Exactly.
I mean, you were saying that the angels were giving us thoughts, but not the ones that go around in circles so much, the ones that are kind of like breakthroughs.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Well, I tell people a lot, don't even watch the news at night. Because what happens is they get caught up in that emotions, and that causes fear. And fear, what does that stand for? False expectations appearing real. So, this was even mentioned in The Secret. 1 in 5 people will get mugged this month or something, and then you're like, oh my gosh, well, I'll be the one. So then somehow you get attracted to this negativity because you're so fearful. And it's amazing
and
how that works.
All thoughts create. So guess what you're doing when you get into that fearful place? You're drawing that kind of experience to you.
Of course, that all, and there's an assumption here that things are separate, that we're in a separate world, and there's a lot of separate things. And, most people believe in a separate God that they have to pray to, and it's going to give them gifts and somehow a better life. And then we're actually saying that angels are something that we have to access, and so then there's a separation there. And then we're saying that all that stuff's out there. A 1 in 5 mugging is out there. It's separate from us, and somehow we're going to actually just make a magnet in our head and draw it in. But maybe it's just it's some kind of a co-creation, and it doesn't really have to be out there. It doesn't. Absolutely. If there's no separation, I mean, that's just a premise. I'm not saying there's no separation, because just like you said, we don't really want to preach to people. We want to have a dialogue and discover, because you said. Both of you said that everybody has to really be on their own path, and everybody has to really create the openings in their own life.
Well, the big according to the Mayan calendar, the whole 2012 experience is supposed to be the elevation of human consciousness to the point of being co-creators with our Creator, meaning that we co-create. In other words, we are able to do what our Creator has done, along with that experience or through that experience. So by each one of us having our own path, we're each moving to that level of understanding. And again, it's the angels are here to facilitate that expansion of consciousness, that expansion of awareness, that everything is really love, and that there is no opposite to that. We like to think of things being dualistic, but like you said, Richard, there is a oneness. Angels, and I don't pretend to know why they are or how they are. I just know that my experiences prove to me that I'm experiencing something that I can't explain other than with that term, angels. It's happening more and more on a greater and greater frequency. And I think it's important for people to know that they have that option in their lives to go to that place and experience that expansion instead of living in fear.
Well, the 2012 is a good example because, of course, what do? They come up with this movie where the whole world ends and there's catastrophic, endings to it.
Yeah.
But the angels has told me that on January 1st, 2010 is when this 2012 energy first started coming about. Mm-hmm. And we're all here at this time for reason to experience this incredible age of consciousness is coming. And it's going to be a world of peace. And we're going to see the world just totally different. Mm-hmm. And people have been affected by this energy. It's been pretty profound. And they said that people that are negative, they may not be able to survive because they can't connect with this energy like the spiritual people can. So it's going to be very interesting what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, if people can't survive, then there's a lot of wash on that. It kind of washes over. And that's kind of like pretty catastrophic because, well, it always has been anyhow. Let me share something with you that actually was in another conversation, and I thought it was really a total breakthrough. But we all know that the world is speeding up. Our world, our personal world, is speeding up, and it just starts out by not being able to have a career for long, or then you have to change, and you have to be kind of mobile. And then when institutions and companies and big business changes as fast as we do, then we're really shocked, like how are these big giants falling by the wayside? And so the speed is obvious, right? And for a while in our life, we think, oh, whoopee, this is really cool. I'm riding the wave, and I've got this immense energy. But what we were saying was that this speed up is kind of a gift that everybody's not going to keep up. And then we said, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? Are they going to be dropped off by the wayside? Are they going to just vegetate or rot or just be gone? And actually, we kind of realized that they're just going to give up this endless race, and they're going to be in peace.
Absolutely.
And that any kind of speedy things. When they confront, they crash, and there's so much speed on both sides, meaning like life is so full of thoughts and doing and everything. There's no room to really imbibe the other one. But with enough people dropping off of this speedy world and realizing peace, somehow that's going to be able to contain the speedy world too. So that's just. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I think, and not only, Richard, is the world speeding up in terms of communication ability. We've got lightning speed, ability to communicate with each other and see what's going on in other parts of the world, none like we've ever had before. But even after the major tsunami we had, a couple of years ago over in the Maltese,
Right.
That earthquake actually caused the Earth physically to spin faster. It actually speeded it up. So our days are a little shorter by a few seconds as a result of that. So, whether that's all tied to what's happening to us emotionally and in our private lives or not is left for anyone to judge. But certainly, most people that I talk to today are saying that they're experiencing something. They know something is happening, and they're not able to put their finger on it. But I look at what's going on in the world, in our politics, in our, with the media, the economic crisis around the world. We're driven to do much more introspection than we ever were before, about who we are, what we're about, and why we're about. Not everything's pretty that we see.
No, but that's exactly my point, that introspection is going to be the only option, starting for the slower people first. But, when you fall off this roller skate, you're gonna just introspect and also find a piece that you thought would be meaningless.
Absolutely.
And you're gonna find out that your life still works, and that actually you can forgive those people that are speeding and those people that convince you to speed. And I think that's a beautiful place to talk to the angels and help me transition from because right now I think if I fall off the roller skate, I'll just be dead. I won't make it. I need it. And so that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, what made sense to me is when somebody explained to me that things have to fall apart to be rebuilt in a new way. I mean, that's why the Depression happened, because we went from a farm-based to a money-based system, and now we're going from a money-based to like all this, electronic stuff is going on. With,
they call it information-based, right?
Yeah, information-based.
Whatever that means. We don't know yet.
Yes, but that's where we're leading up to. But also, the angels have told me so many times that our lives we've made ourselves like everything's so complicated, and just keep it simple. I mean, bring love into your life and meditate and take walks, and don't spend your time worrying and fearful. And that's what's happening with everybody. And so when you get back to the basics, just life is so much better, and it just looks better and seems better, But also with the speeding up thing, somebody told me that 2012 is going to go by so fast, it's going to last like 8 months. So when you think about that, it's like, okay, everything is shifting.
Everything is shifting. I think too that, we're finding out that we can live with less. We're over consuming. We're over, we're doing everything in mass quantities. And what we're finding out, because we have to cut back, everyone's being stretched financially. And, look back a decade or two ago, everyone was being stressed because the divorce rate was, over 50%. So, you had situations where the universe is trying to wake us up spiritually, trying to tell us that really all this make-believe that you're doing out here is of no consequence. What really matters is opening yourself up to love. And that's where the angels are really trying to get us. All the readings I do, all of the work I think Linda does, is about getting people back to that basic understanding. And that through forgiveness, we can reach that place a little faster.
That's fantastic. I think I just have one more question that I'd kind of like to got a curiosity about. But Linda, I know you say that the angels have been telling me this and that. In other words, they're communicating to you about you. But sometimes it's easy for us to see the other, but it's kind of hard for us to see ourselves. And I was just wondering, because I think you guys did a reading on each other. And so then, is it hard to read for yourself, or to, up to a point you get plenty of information on yourself, but maybe when you break through and work with another person, you actually break some barriers?
Well, the angels have helped me through the years to work on myself. I'm certainly the hardest person to work on, right? Yourself, because you have to go and get deep. But it's easy to tell somebody else. You know what I mean? I get a lot of messages for people during the healings, but for me, I had to go deep as a child and understand what was going on in my life and why I am the way I am. And the angels helped me with that. That took a long time. I tell people you have to be your own hypnotherapist, counseling is good and all that, but who knows yourself better than yourself, And I have actually classes in this, and I tell people, what are your personality traits that you want to change, and those traits that you have that you want to change, that affects your relationship with other people too, so it's all fascinating. So once you resolve that, then issues seem to be resolved with other people. So I've certainly learned an incredible amount of myself, and it never ends. It's certainly a journey, but I've come a long way, and I'm a completely different person than I was, years ago because of it. So it's really made a difference.
Yeah, I think really for me, it is hard to read yourself. I do get downloads all the time, and I'm being given direction almost, constantly, because I do work with, my angels every day. The thing that I think is really helpful is to have another person kind of look from their perspective, with the use of their energy beings, at maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe my ego is getting in the way of me seeing beyond what I see. It's always helpful. And you're right, Linda and I did kind of an exercise on each other today, and we can kind of go over what we came up with, which is kind of interesting, actually. Yeah. And I don't know which one wants to go first, but we can tell you.
Okay, I mean, you can go ahead.
Okay. Basically, when I sat down with Linda, and what I'm finding out now is I get hits before I actually sit down. I get downloads. The first thing that the angels told me about Linda was that it had something to do with family. There's family issues here. And really what was coming up big time for me is what I was seeing in her third chakra, which is what they call the soul chakra. A lot of times it's in the solar plexus. Was a lot of fear, that gut fear that we kind of have. And it may not be conscious. Consciously you may say, I'm fine. I'm great.
Yeah, what's conscious? Not much. Huh?
So what the angels are really telling me is that she had to work on releasing those other little corners of fear inside of her. Now, you would think someone that is as gifted a healer as she is wouldn't have that problem. But again, because we tend to be think on conscious levels rather than unconscious levels, we're not seeing necessarily all the things that are hidden in our unconscious minds, even though we think, consciously we're in great shape. And really, it was about staying in her heart. The immediate thing I felt with Linda as she was working on me today was this wonderful energy of almost being levitated, kind of a vibration through my body and kind of being
very much a lightness.
A lightness, but what I was also receiving was, this is the place Linda needs to stay. Where she is right now in doing this work is not always where she is. So I kind of use the analogy of a doctor. Remember the doctors that used to make house calls, right? They'd show up with their bag of goodies and, open that up, pull out their hypodermic needles and shoot you up with penicillin or whatever you needed, put the stuff back in the bag and leave, and they were done. Well, I kind of saw Linda kind of doing these healings on the people, their clients that she's working with, putting away that energy and then going off into the world. What the angels were telling me is, no, don't put it away. You need to stay with it. You need to embody it. You need to, you need to take that experience, that energy that you just celebrated, that energy that you just brought into, that you just manifested, and not put it back in the bag, but take it with you.
That sounds like a challenge, because in a way, healing, we're focusing on the other.
Exactly.
So then we're not, but I mean, in one way, it could be, you could slip up on that, but in another way, it's maybe your process, even before you begin, is always touching base, touching center, and so then maybe that's very integrated with the whole thing. Is to,
well, for me, Richard, I tell you, when I do a reading, it's sometimes a very emotional connection with a client, because I actually see experiences that they've had in their lives. I kind of do have a visualization thing going on, but I also pick up emotionally where they've been. A couple times when I was reading Linda today, there was an intense sadness that came up for me that really resonated to another part of her life that was very closed and kind of restricted. And when I finish a reading with a person, I have kind of a very interesting vested interest in them, because I've just entered into an energy field and shared an experience that's very personal and very private with them.
Kind of like a sacred territory.
It's a sacred territory, definitely. And I have to honor that. So when I leave a reading, I'm very respectful of what the angels brought me. I'm very respectful of what they've shared with me, and allowing me to be able to be of some assistance to that person, but also to take that energy and that gratitude with me as I leave the reading. I think that's important.
Well, obviously that was very unconscious, because I mean, people like call me Joy because I wrote the book about 10 steps to feeling joy. So I mean, I certainly feel very joyful, really, for the most part. So yeah, he touched on something probably that I had, was probably so deep I didn't even realize. Because like I said, I've done a lot of work on myself too through the years. So that was quite interesting. So.
Yeah, and what I always I like to. I have a deck of cards, angel cards that I use, and we were talking a lot about joy. These cards never fail me. And I asked Linda to shuffle the cards and pick a card, and she picks the card. She looks at it, and it's the angel of joy. Out of 40, 50 some cards.
She probably says, okay, right, that's me, I'm there, and you're saying, no, that's what you need.
That's what you need. Actually, what I took away from that card, because it did speak to that in the reading following, that she has much more potential to grow and to be of service by because we can think consciously that we're joyful, but we're glossing over life.
Absolutely,
And I'm happy, I'm free, I'm good,
No matter how terrible my life was, I always had a good story about it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, no matter where, it was all totally relative.
I live in a great neighborhood, I do this, I do that, It's all that stuff. But really what the angels were saying is that there's a deeper part. There's a deeper, it's really going inside. And like I said earlier, it's about really keeping that energy up front that you manifest, not putting it back in the bag and going home and bringing it back. It's honoring it, it's welcoming it, it's being with it.
It's like staying conscious to it.
Staying conscious to it, exactly.
Right? It's just about being conscious.
And more will be revealed to her. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I wake up every day and I dance for joy in my bedroom. I mean, I have my gratitude list that I always say, so.
You're way beyond anything I've ever done.
But a lot of us too, I want to say this, that when we become rote, with our processes, remember, we think we're doing the right thing. Okay, I'm taking care of myself today. I got my list of things to do. Here okay, check that one off. I've done it. Check that one off. I'm done and I'm finished. Check that one off. I'm done. Finished. And now I can go on with my life and I'm happy. But it's not that. You get what I'm saying, Richard? It's really...
what I'm getting is that it's just not relative to anything. There's no benchmark out there that this is going to be relative to. It's just all about you and your potential. And your potential, where's the limits to it? So then,
exactly.
Let's say you're just fabulously great, that means you just scratch the surface, you can really fly.
Right, and it is about, really, for me, I mean, I will get down on my knees, I will, I sit quietly in meditation to really welcome the energy, to really feel the energy, to have if you will, to have that angel wrap its wings, enfold me in its wings and hold me in that space, and to be comfortable there, so that I lay witness to the energy. I give gratitude to the energy. and really, it's quite an emotional experience for me when I do that.
Did you both do readings on each other? Or?
Yes, we did.
Yes. And for me, every reading, of course, is unique for anybody who is a reader or healer. And sometimes they come through with maybe an animal, insect, or bird will come through, maybe an affirmation, maybe a number that I got to look up. There's like a book of angel numbers that Dorian Virtue has that I use a lot. So basically, I actually got all three for Rosmond. I also get certain crystals that people may need because crystals are very powerful. There's a lot of energy in crystals. So I got the sunstone for him, and that will help heighten his intuition. It'll help lift heavy emotions on his solar plexus. It'll increase self-worth, and I thought that would be very good for him. I also got the number 572, and 572 was this confirmation that he's definitely on the right path, and he just has to go and keep the faith. The affirmation I got for him was, he illumine me so that I can be enlightened, and he needs to say that every day. And then I also got the affirmation, allow me to see what I need to see, because I think if he did more readings, he certainly would be very successful at it, but there's something that's stopping him from doing it as a full-time,
In other words,
job.
he's not doing that many readings, and something holds him back, and he just kind of is a little scared to really just declare himself.
Right, exactly. So once he starts doing that, once he gets to that level of let go and let God, then everything's going to just all fall into place. I also got that he needs to meditate. He's not doing that enough. He needs to take deep breaths, and throughout the day, and deep breaths are very important because it allows you have wisdom in and negativity out. So people, they forget to breathe deeply, and I think everybody needs to do that.
Is it beneficial to visualize that while you're breathing, or just take
yes.
Oh yeah.
wisdom in, right?
Yes, wisdom in, negativity out. And I also got a term from the angels, which I've never heard of, but he has what's called a laughing soul. So I was actually almost like laughing in the beginning when I first started working on him. So I thought that was interesting. Also, his chakras, he had more energy in his lower chakras. So that all goes in line with, wanting to be more intuitive, also, and then releasing some things into his heart that he has, and then speaking his truth, telling people, I'm able to go and do, readings, and advertise and promote yourself, but it's all the energies in what they call the earthly chakras, the solar plexus, which is the power and control, and what you referred to as like the soul chakra.
That's the soul, third one. You have the root chakra, and then there's the there's root chakra, which is in the base of the spine. And actually, when we talk about chakras, we're really talking about the major seven. If you look at the Hindu tradition of chakra studies, and interesting story about how they came up with those, there's more than seven. There's chakras in your hands and your feet and various other spots in your body. But the major seven are in alignment through the trunk of the body.
Right. So his lower chakras, along with the root, that has to do with being secure in your life. Not worrying about money or home or food and shelter. The sacral chakra, which is 4 inches above the base chakra, that has to do with emotions. And a lot of people who have addictions have issues with your sacral chakra too. So. Being emotional and keeping those emotions there, a lot of times that causes blockages in that chakra. And then, the third chakra, which is the solar plexus, the power and control. So he needs to basically balance these chakras, because right now they're not balanced, since more of the energy is in the lower chakras. And I have people that they're so incredibly spiritual that the energy is in their upper chakras. So then their lower chakras, that all needs to be balanced.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So that's basically.
So then they have to balance, or would it be like you're working on an issue and you have to kind of get through that issue and then it releases and they open up in their due time, or do they have to be kind of forced open or guided to be open, or?
They could temporarily be blocked because of an issue, but that's when also you need to just let go and stop the worrying, because worrying and fear and negativity causes the blockages. So yeah, you want all of them to be bright and glowing and beautiful, and they all have different colors, And people have seen him. I know Doreen Virtue has the ability to be able to see
I work with him.
chakras.
Yeah,
So
and auras too.
it's fascinating.
Yeah.
So
Fascinating. That's a great word, because it is totally fascinating what you're bringing to us today, and we really thank you for this time and for this little get together. And I think I feel like I've learned so much. We can't really know until we experience, right?
Absolutely.
Until we just ask people to give us some guidance and see, however it comes. If it comes through these channels, let's have it and see how we can receive it and how it can change our life.
I think, Richard, just by asking, angels to speak through you or to you about what you need to do next, and start to keep track of what happens in your life. I mean, they can't work for you. Doreen talks about this too. They can't work for you unless you ask them to.
Right.
They are, they're here for us, to guide us, to take care of us. They're messengers, protectors. They're all we have to do is ask, and see what happens.
Yeah. So then we actually discussed it a little, because once you ask, you can sit down with a pad of paper and a pencil and see what comes.
Right.
And, maybe that would be the way to really put it to the test.
Yeah.
Right, and also ask for the right people, right opportunities, and right events to come into my life to help me move forward. So
I love it. So here we are with Linda Padgurskis and Rosmond Williams.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Pleasure.
And thanks everybody for coming in and sticking to the end and watching our little get together. And I hope it's made a difference for you, or just it's easy. Just ask and then put yourself in the mood to receive. So thank you.